It's a good afternoon to you, all of our followers and scholars, students, and enthusiasts of music on this train of the Organ House Concerts and Seminar Series. You're welcome again. We appreciate the fact that you have been there. Thank you very much. The Organ House Concerts and Seminar Series, here we pride ourselves in making a big deal out of topical issues that are of concern to scholars, to enthusiasts, to students, to researchers, so that we can have a robust contribution from all angles, have robust interaction and discussion. So we are here again on another session, and I'm looking forward to it myself. I believe we're going to have a great time today. The Mountaintop University is a place of learning. And so the issue of education will always be at the front burner. And so today we want to make or attempt to make an assessment or an evaluation of the music in our tertiary institutions across the nation. And to do that for us today, we have a seasoned educator, very experienced, well-exposed, who has been at work for quite a while. And I'm sure you will agree with me when you listen to her that she's got something to present on the system of educational institutions in Nigeria with respect to music. So today, we're going to be listening to Dr. Adeola Funmilayo Odunuga. Adeola Funmilayo Odunuga is a seasoned music educator with more than 3 decades of tertiary education, teaching in our higher institutions. Currently, she lectures at the Adeyemi Federal University of Education, Ondo. She specializes in the music teachers education. She plays the flute, the recorder, and she's a registered teacher with the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. She's a member of the Association of Nigerian Musicologists, Society of Nigeria, and that of the Music Educators. She's a member of World Council for Curriculum and Induction, the Nigerian chapter. You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
It's a good afternoon to you, ma'am. We are all been looking forward to this experience. So, ma'am, we want to make an attempt at assessing or evaluating the music in our tertiary institution. Your presentation.
Thank you very much. I want to greet everyone once again, my colleagues, senior colleagues, lecturers like myself, music teachers, students, and music enthusiasts. This title, Assessment and Evaluation in Music Examination in Nigerian Tertiary Institutions. This research work was birthed from 3 experiences that I had. One, as a student in one of the Nigerian institutions, then as a current lecturer for the more than past 3 decades. And then lastly, as an external moderator for some Nigerian higher institutions, Department of Music. So all through these experiences, I have seen some loopholes in the way we assess and evaluate music examinations. And that is why I feel it's a topic of research that we could work on. The highlights for this paper, I mean, what we expect to see and to hear is captured in my introduction. I said, music examination in Nigeria tertiary institutions for a very long time differs in quality and implementation. This paper is not to spite any institution or group of persons or persons, but it's just for us to come together to look at these loopholes and discuss and look for a way by which we can cover the loopholes. Before I go much into the introduction, I said highlights. What I mean by the highlights are these three samples. One, let us imagine a 100-level class, maybe in the College of Education, University, or Polytechnic. We have a practical examination. One student in the class has had maybe some knowledge or some music background. And in the same class, he is given a grade 3 music piano to play for an exam. While at the same time, some of the members of that same class is given grade 1 piano piece. You begin to wonder that at the end of the day, all the members of the class will graduate with the same certificates, but will have different level of performance. And I feel that is not good enough, especially with my knowledge on assessment and evaluation. So that's why I said that in some tertiary institutions, music examinations assessment differs in quality and implementation. That's the very first example. Another example, we are still going to go further into it in the bulk of the lecture. Another example is having an examination of 1 unit course. That 1 unit course is expected to have 15 hours lecture, 2 units, 30 hours, 3 units, 45 hours. Now, let us now imagine having a question, maybe in theory or something, for a 3-hour or 3-unit course. You now say 3 questions to answer 2 for 1 hour for a 3-unit course. And you get another institution, you see 1 unit course, 4 questions to answer 3. You see that there is already an anomaly. The third example is in the affective domain. When you want students to listen and appreciate music, you discover that in some schools it's only purely Western, in some African, in some both. And at the end of the day, these 3 sets of students will graduate with BA Music, BEd Music, NCE, ND, or whatsoever the case may be. So I feel it's high time for us to look at it. And I discovered that what prompted this problem is what we call this minimum standard that we operate both at the NCC, NUC, that's NCC is National Commission for Colleges of Education, NBT, National Board for Technical Education, and NUC, National University Commission. There is a curriculum, and that curriculum is nomenclatured minimum standard. That means what is in the curriculum is the minimum thing that you can do. You could add some alongside, but it is only the curriculum that we have that is harmonized. There is no examination examination board or examination guidelines that is going to guide everybody, everyone. And come to think of it, we all have general musicianship as our first degree. And along the line, some people will specialize second degree in African music and then PhD in composition, whatever. But most often, we all, about 65, 70% end up teaching. That teaching in primary school, secondary school, college of education, polytechnic, and university. So you discover that there are some lacuna as far as assessment and evaluation is concerned. Many of us are not tutored alongside assessment. And so you see various lecturers doing what they believe is right. And that is why we discover that it affects performance of students. And that's why it's an area of research that I feel we should all look into. In music examinations, there are theory and practical questions. And each of these two need proper understanding. What do I mean by proper understanding is that you need to know how to assess theory exam. You need to know how to assess listening exam. You need to know how to assess performance exams. Because music knowledge is domiciled in 3 domains: the cognitive, the affective, and the psychomotor. We all know that the cognitive domain has to do with call and recall, knowledge, comprehension, while affective has to do with listening, comprehending, analysis. And that has to do with value and attitude. And psychomotor is purely practical, where you either sing, dance, conduct, or play any of the African and Western instruments. So definitely, if we look at it closely, you see that the way to assess them will be different. The way you assess crochet plus crochet is equal to meaning will be different from the way you assess somebody playing flute, for an example. So different method of assessment is needed for these domains. And this should be clearly specified because each of these domains has peculiarity. So that is why this research paper is asking and showing us the need for a unified set of music examination policies. It may not be directly the same verbatim, but there are some policies and evaluation policies that we need to put in place to be implemented in Nigeria education system. What is objectives of this study? It is to engineer writing good and standard questions and marking guide. Let us not forget that we are talking of tertiary institutions. Directly or indirectly, it boils down to the other classes of institution. So both in writing question and marking guide for music theory and practical examinations. The second objective is to initiate a uniform music practical examination assessment format, or if we like, you call it rubric, that contains some descriptors of observable indices in accordance to professional guidelines in our Nigerian tertiary institution. Let us look at some keywords here. We have assessment, we have evaluation. You know, most often in education parlance, these evaluation and assessments, they are often used interchangeably, but they mean different things. Assessment is the immediate measurement of students' learning, while evaluation is a larger concept that involves assessment. But the two of them, both evaluation and assessment, are used to measure the performance of individuals. And it is this measurement that is one of our focus. So when we look at assessment separately, we see assessment as the systematic process Don't let us forget that word, systematic process. Is a process, systematic, that is, I will say that is intentional, documenting student data, measuring their knowledge cognitively, measuring their skills, psychomotor, and measuring attitudes and belief, affective. And it requires criteria, measures, and are evidence-driven. What I mean by evidence-driven is that by the time you have taught students and assessed them well, the evidence should show a weak student should have weak score. There should be enough measures to pick out what we will measure, not just random. You know, why we need to be intentional is that, you know, music travels in time and space. And if you are not careful, before you say it's, you know, it's fleeting, you just listen to it, say, that music is sweet, that music is melodious. But there are certain indices that we need to really look at. What is purpose of assessment? Is to promote student learning, evaluate their knowledge, and provide a mark or grade for their academic performance. And you see, this mark or grade must be unbiased. When a student has a score, the student should be happy, or the student should believe that this is their score. That is when it's unbiased. And that is what I bring up under principles of assessment. According to Norton, 2009, as cited by Akinkunle, Ogumboye, and Adeyemi, 2019, there are 7 principles of assessment. They are reliability. Your assessment should be reliable. The measures should be reliable. Levelness, it should measure the level of the students. It should not be higher or lower than the level of the students. It should be transparent, very transparent, that when the students see the assessment guideline, they should know that this is objective enough. It should be fair, fair to weak students, fair to strong students. It should be consistent, consistency. Your measure this year must be consistent in the following year, all through the years. It should be valid, and it should be inclusive. Inclusive in the sense that both female and male students should not be, the assessment should not be subjective, and it should not favor a gender than the other. It should not favor a blind man than somebody that sees. It should not favor somebody that has one weakness or the other. It should be inclusive. So those are the principles of assessment that we are going to have at the back of our mind when we go into the real discussion. Assessment tools. We have so many assessment tools. We could use grading rubrics. We could use self-assessments. We could use survey. We could use examination. We could use tests. And we can use quiz. But you see, most often in Nigeria, is most often tests and examination that we use. We don't use other tools. There should be room for students to self-assess themselves. They should assess themselves. When they assess themselves, we can now try and cross ideas to see whether what the students assess himself and what the teacher to assess is on the same platform, or at least maybe with minor difference. And then we could use survey. Survey should not only be not only used for research, it should be used also in the class to test students. Quiz between same gender, between different gender. You know, those assessments will help us to know whether our assessment at the long run is biased or not biased. So how do we assess music examination? Just like we said earlier, we should determine that we are assessing the cognitive, which has to do with maybe theory exams, history of music, African music, and those ones that involves call and recall. And then the affective, that's oral and sight reading, and then psychomotor. We call them applied music in some of our institution of higher learning. So for theory questions, we could use objective questions, we could use essay, we could use fill in the gap to assess cognitive knowledge. While to assess psychomotor knowledge, we are going to use this rubric that we are going to talk about today. For us to write good questions, we are looking at examinations now. The examination questions should accurately measure student knowledge. It should be free of knowledge-based errors. It should not be ambiguous, having double meaning. And the language in the question should be concise, should be clear. Those are things that we should intentionally carry out when we are writing our questions. And just like I said earlier, cognitive examinations, form of essay, multiple choice, objective and open-ended questions. Sunny Ade was born in the year George Frederick Handel wrote dash oratorios. Those are fill in the gap, open-ended questions. And for affective examinations, we can equally use fill in the gap, open-ended, objective, and essay questions. And for psychomotor, that is premised on demonstrating skills. Though in Nigeria, you know, we now have in WAEC alternative to practical questions. Much as I don't believe in alternative to practical questions, I still believe that they can be used because those alternative to practical questions, though it indulges students, but those questions, I believe most often cannot be answered by somebody that is not skilled. For a flutist, for example, say, how do you play middle C? For a person that does not know how to play flute, that question will not, the person will not be able to answer it very well. Now, I want us to look at what I call weight and rate. Let us look at this example. I'm sure everyone is looking at the screen. Let us see this course, Music 228, Music Education 3. This is a sample of an examination question for a college. College here, I mean College of Education. This is a 1-unit course. Ideally, for a 1-unit course, like I said earlier, we are expected to have 3 questions to answer 2. But now, let us look at the weight and rates of this question. What I mean by weight is that, you see, most often, if you set exams, maybe 4 questions, and you discover that without you telling students to particularly answer one as a compulsory question, if you see students, maybe 80 or 90% answering one question, look at it very carefully. It is likely that the weight is light. If questions are weighted evenly, most of the times, don't forget I say most of the times, if they are weighted evenly, you will not see many students writing writing answer to one particular question. You will see that there will be diversification of students writing different questions numbers. Look at this one now. What do you understand by instructional material? It said 5 marks. That's 1A. That's the definition. When you look at 2A, define micro teaching. You see 4 marks. Let us look at question 3. What is classroom management? You see 6 marks. You see diverse rating for different for same expectation. Definition. 6 marks, 4 marks, 5 marks. So when you look at that, you see that the rate is slightly needs adjustment. Then if you look at this again, 3 questions for 1 hour. Answer only 3 questions in 3 questions, no options. That is faulty. For a 1 unit course, you should give up. In fact, most often, we should give options for our questions. Then, for students to now answer these 3 questions in 1 hour, you can be sure that the students will not be able to express themselves very well, and it's going to affect their scores. So that's what I mean when I said, most often, if we don't intentionally work on our assessment and evaluation, it will affect the students. We show inclusivity. We should mind students that are, yes, we know they must be able to work within a time frame, but this 1 hour, beg your pardon, is too little. It could be 1 hour, 45 minutes. It could be an hour, 30 minutes, given an average of 30 minutes for a question. But if they are to answer 2 out of these 3, yes, we can say an hour or an hour, 15 minutes, so that when they write for 30 minutes, 15 minutes can be to tidy up. Let us look at this second example, theory of music. We see this question 1. There are 10 triads required, 2 marks per triad. But let us look at that question 2. A scale is given. Build triad on each degree of the scale. There are 8 notes. They are to build same triad on 8 notes, but it is awarded 10 marks. You see that there is a problem there. If the students are not to answer all, then you will see that some students want to write question 1 because they know that each triad scores 2 marks. But this question 2, it scores less than 2 marks. So those are the things when we talk of weights and rates that we need to really look at, to be intentional and to really check and see whether those questions are weighted and rated well. Equally, marking guide is also expected to be written with the question. Most often when we write our marking guide, it is not detailed. And the answers should be detailed. When you say students are to write, write characteristics of Baroque, period. That characteristic, you should tell us whether it's 5 that are expected to write. Award 10 marks for 5 characteristics mentioned, 2 marks for each one, or 1.5 marks for each of the characteristics. Then 2 marks for good English and orderly presentation. We should have the details there. And the grading details should be indicated. The allocations of scores for answers should be based on difficulty and answering time. If the difficulty of the question is high and it takes a lot of time to answer, the mark allocation should also be higher. Now, let us come to practical exams, psychomotor. This research work got its data from 14 institutions across the zones in Nigeria, 7 universities, 6 colleges of education, and 1 polytechnic. So we try to look at the sample rubric, or let me call it assessment sheet, that is used to assess practical music. Look at this figure 1 now. The name of the student, the registration number, instrument, and score. There are no indices to tell us that this is what we are expected to score. You just say, okay, it's playing flute or it's playing trumpet. The trumpet sounds very well, and you write the score. Let us look at the second sample. This sample, there are scores for scales, arpeggio, major instruments, minor instruments, orchestra, and unseen. Most often when students perform their pieces, prepared pieces, we give them unseen for them to play on site, for us to know whether they are versatile on their instrument or not. Let us look at another example. This has appearance, posture, fingering, regularity, virtuoso pianist, and hymn. I guess this is for piano. These are samples of assessment musical sheets that I feel are not detailed enough. It is not possible for me to put up here all the samples that we discovered in all the institutions, but these are just abridged samples. And I think in our different schools, we can monitor and see what we do in our different schools. So that's why this research now brought up this idea. This assessment sheet that I tried to bring up with the total mark of 60 marks. We have dressing, comportment, formats, posture. Because you see at times some students will just come up, they don't know how to stand, they will just open their leg anyhow, they will just stand anyhow. It's part of what we are to score. So posture, 4 marks, regularity of scale, regularity, 3 marks, melodic accuracy, 3 marks. Under arpeggio, same thing, regularity and melodic accuracy. Then for the exam piece, we have melodic accuracy, rhythmic accuracy, tone, clarity, and interpretation. That takes 25 marks. So it is not only just listening to the music, but looking at those nitty-gritty. The music is it's very sound, it's very sweet. She plays very well, she sings very well. What are the indices that we are going to score? It is not the well, but how well. Then we are to give unseen piece to 10 marks. Melodic accuracy, rhythmic accuracy, tone clarity. It is not just the person playing the unseen piece, but what is the accuracy? Then we have viva. That viva is ask question. This music was written by Jeff Handel. What's about him? Which period does he, in which period does he exist? What are the things that you can say about it? That's for woodwind and brass. And ditto for strings, voice, and examination and percussion. For voice, we want to look at, apart from the dressing, posture, scales, and arpeggio, we want to look at tone clarity to interpretation. And for practical music exam on percussion, We want to look at timing concerning strokes, roles, timing regularity, pattern, timing regularity, and then rolling techniques, coordination. So those are the things that I feel we should work on, indices, specific indices that we need to look at and assess. By the time we do all that, we can be sure that the assessment will be unbiased, will be reliable, and valid. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate the extent you've gone to give us very specific details of such assessments for the students. The little question I have, maybe before we call all our contributors into the picture, from this assessment, how do we achieve how do we get it across to all our assessors? You are at Ondo now, we are in Lagos, some other people are elsewhere. This kind of structured approach to the work, how do we get it across to everybody so that we know this is a standard that we follow? Just like you said at the outset, everybody appear to be doing what they think is right. And this is a format or a standard. How do we get across to everybody? And
thank you.
Yes.
Are you done?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that all?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. You see, let us take WAEC, for example.
Okay, ma'am.
You know, WAEC have and JAM, they have some examination scoring guidelines. Now, things like this seminar is like a proposal. By the time we have presented it, publish it in journals or in other outfits, we can see people will critique it. And by the time we finalize all the criticism, then it can be brought up as a final template to be used in all our institutions. Don't forget, like I said, that NCC, MBT, NUC, they have minimum standard for curriculum, but not for examination. So when things like this come up, there will be a standardized mode for us to use, and then it will now be generally used across board. But in the meantime, each institution will still try and experiment with it. You understand? So at this stage, we are still at the experimental and critique stage.
I pretty much appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. So what we are presenting is a proposal, one that like the scientists will call a generalization that everybody comes to test before it becomes law. Okay, that's a good one. Thank you so much, ma'am. I am yet to see all our followers and enthusiasts and contributors. If you have questions on this lecture we just let me put it that way. Could you come raise your hands? Let's have the questions.